What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster here on this Tuesday, May 10th, 2022 date. It's about 7:36 p.m. California time. Latest quake shows a 1.3 earthquake, pretty small earthquake, into the area of Southern California, just north of the Garlock fault structure. Let's go ahead and check out that activity here on the flat scale model. You can see that 1.3 showing up here right around the Ridgecrest area. North of the swarming area that we've been kind of monitoring. Had me a little concerned here, but we haven't seen any further earthquake activity with the swarming since this morning. So a total of what do we got for that little sequence here? It was right on the Garlock fault structure, about 5 earthquakes or so within this vicinity. But again, right smack dab on this Garlock fault structure. Not a whole lot of historical earthquake activity on this fault system. I think they had a 5-pointer back quite a few years ago, but it's been a while since they've seen a major full rupture up here, and this thing's, I think, capable of producing an 8-pointer, and same with the southern part of the San Andreas fault. So you got two sections here that are kind of been building up some strain. All right, let's go ahead and back out of here real quick. Want to cover the activity going on here in the South America region, where we've seen a pretty large 6.8 earthquake here in the region of Argentina. 193 kilometers deep for this earthquake. Now, a lot of the big earthquakes here tend to take place upstream, so this is still rather deep down into the Peru-Chile Trench. By the way, accumulated stress rates here along this region roughly between 60 and 80 millimeters a year. So, and it varies, right, depending on the dynamics of the plates here. But 80 millimeters, pretty lengthy, or a pretty good accumulated stress rate. So, 6.8. Got to remember, a lot of activity up here happens on the subduction zone interface here upstream. I want to show you guys the last. Well, this is activity since about 1960 or so. I ran the 6.5 and above model to show you guys all the activity that's occurred up and down the Peru-Chile Trench, and there is a lot. It does not take a lot of time for an earthquake to build up some stress to release a rather large earthquake. So the earthquake we've seen in question today is a 6.8 in the region where, no doubt, we've seen some other large quakes. I've seen a 7.2, 7.0, another 7.0, all deep earthquake activity. But the rather large ones tend to sit right up here along the subduction zone, similar to what we're going to see one day on the Cascadia subduction zone area off the coast of northern Cal. But the majority of these earthquakes, rather large and pretty shallow, not as deep as those 200 to 300 kilometer ones. In fact, most of them, if we look at the 9.5 that kicked up back in 1960, what was it here? I know it's back here somewhere. 1964, right? I think I jumped over it. Where did it go? Oh, I'm not even. Look at that. Not even on the map. There we go. Let's go back here and look. Some bloopers for this Tuesday night. Okay, where's it hiding? Am I looking over it? I gotta be looking over it here. 1963. Maybe it doesn't want me to find it. There was the 8.1, but I know it was before that. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. 1960. Didn't go back far enough. So it's a couple of years earlier than what I thought here. So, man, let me tell you, it's been a pretty busy day. 9.5 back in 1960, the world's largest ever recorded earthquake. But who's to say there wasn't some larger earthquake that hasn't been recorded, prior to historical timekeeping on these quakes. So you never know. At least that's the most recent one that we have recorded. This one struck at about 25 kilometers. See what I mean? As far as these larger, deep earthquakes here. And there's most of the region up here. You kind of got this bend in the plate system here in this trench. And that's kind of where a lot of the mountains and stuff go, kind of spread up. and then we see that deeper earthquake activity kind of pushing those mountains, and that's the area where we see a lot of deep activity. We don't see too much down here just due to the dynamics of this plate and the bend here, but we do get some definitely some deep ones. But again, the majority of the large quakes sit right here at the subduction zone interface, about 25, maybe 40 kilometers in here. I want to look at some quiet zones since about the 60s here, since about 1960. Again, this is 6.5 and above, and there's a couple regions here. Of course, I believe slip rate here kind of drops off dramatically once we get down here to the southern part of this area. That's just south of where the 9.5 had struck back in 1960. But there still can be some rather large earthquakes in here, just kind of missing a couple areas, a little gap in this region. And if we zoom in a little bit here, we can kind of pinpoint some other areas that are kind of lacking activity in terms of, well, not showing up on the map. So there's a couple sections here that kind of have me a little bit on the concerned side when it comes to the possible ruptures here along the Peru-Chile Trench. Now, not everywhere is going to show up here, but this here is a little map. Kind of shows you the Peru-Chile Trench area, this little bend here in the plate, like I mentioned here on the USGS map. Looks like back in 1868, 1877, we had a pair of upper eights within this bend area. So it's been a while. It's definitely been a while since we've seen some larger movement here where we're seeing the deeper earthquake activity inland. And then again, there's some of the gaps here, about almost 100 miles or so in these gap sections. This area here is really missing a whole lot of activity. So these could be possibly in the future some areas to watch. And then again, it could strike, you know, pretty much within the area where the 9.5 struck back in 1960. So we never know, so, you know, 100% certainty. But there's certain areas, you know, to watch in terms of monitoring this deep earthquake movement that we're seeing and the subsequent shallower trench areas where they're lacking activity. Now, specifically right here across this area where we've seen that earthquake strike today, seen quite a bit of movement here. Some large ones as well within this area, 1995 or so. But it doesn't mean we don't have enough pressure out there to build up another big one. It's just when the deeper ones kick in, folks, that's when I kind of open my eyes and maybe think the possibility of a much larger quake. 6.8 is not that big of a deal here in the South America region. These guys get the biggest quakes along this massive subduction zone. All right, so getting back to the recent earthquake activity, we have noticed a little bit of further movement, and this here was this 5.4 kicked up roughly a few minutes after the 6.8. So see that movement? We're talking thousands of miles away, but it can definitely have an effect here on the activity down south. Of course, you got a couple different plates moving. This plate moving west here, westward, and then you got this plate moving eastward. So you got that subduction zone interface here. And most of this, this plate, the South American plate here, is, let me see if I can bring up the plate movement map. Hold on a second here, folks. I thought I had it up here, but I guess I didn't. See what we got. See if I can pull this up. Here's a pretty good map. See if I can open that here real quick and show you guys the general plate movement. See the Nazca plate here subducting underneath the South American plate. These guys have it kind of showing a little bit of northwestward movement in this area. I could have swore it was more of a westward movement in this region. Like, for example, this map here. See the South American plate? These guys are showing directly west with this plate into the Nazca plate. And I think that's a little bit more accurate. So I'm not for sure about the other model. Like I say, it's hard. You never know. You get all these different different models. We could use any one, right? So this one in general, here. South American plate, Nazca plate right here where we've seen the 6.8 today. With the Scotia plate, don't even really see that on here. See, this one's not even listing all the plates. So, man, I was hoping to find something I can kind of point out to you guys. Let's see what this one is here. There's arrows all over the place, huh? There's arrows all over the place, but I was hoping to use a map. We'll go ahead and use this one, but we know this is a little bit more westward movement here in this area. So you got the Scotia plate. They're showing that it's moving upwards a little bit in this region, but I still think that's kind of a little opposite. It should be more west movement. So we've seen that activity kick up here following that 6.8, and it does kind of make sense here, right? Because this area, the Antarctic plate, kind of scooting the Scotia plate, the Scotia plate to the east, while the South American plate is kind of moving it to the west here. So that would explain the deeper activity up here, and then the subsequent shallower earthquake activity down south here along the South Sandwich Islands. And that was 39 kilometers for that 5.4, and we've seen this area kicking up over the last 24 hours pretty nicely, with a bunch of 5s and some 4s out there in this region. So a whole bunch of dynamics here at play, folks, and in terms of looking at each individual plate. Plate tectonics is a mess sometimes when you look at the specifics of it. All right, let's move on past that. As far as aftershock sequences here, this is a thing that I'm not seeing, folks, is the aftershock sequences. There's nothing going on. Let me check the EMSC model. I know they're always pretty much showing swarms of 3s and whatnot, but even here, these guys aren't really showing anything significant on their map until you drop down to the smaller board. And even then, look, it's pretty quiet. Just a couple of 3s for a 6.8 earthquake. So stuff like that you got to watch for in terms of maybe something much bigger coming, because we normally look for aftershocks coming following this size of a quake, but it's not. It's gone. There's nothing really happening. Let's see here. Let me back out of here real quick and cover some movement up into the west coast area. Of course, we've seen that activity along the Garlock fault structure. Now we're seeing some Ridgecrest movement. Pretty scattered activity all up and down the state today. A lot of it just all over the place. We're getting a return of movement across the Candelaria Hills in the Nevada region. That's definitely picking up here. Over the last 24 hours, it's been really quiet for the past few weeks, but we're starting to see a return of pressure for this region. And looking at Nevada, man, it's scattered out and about all over the place. A pretty broad view of activity. No major movement to report throughout Nevada. Just that activity kicking up broadly across the region. Northern California, not a whole lot kicking up. We did see some activity here right smack dab on the San Andreas Fault, right around where the 1906 earthquake struck. 1.4 and a 1.0, that occurring just northwest of San Francisco, again on the San Andreas Fault Zone. Let's see, a little bit of movement around Cobb Mountain. Of course, the hydrothermal operations out there in the volcanic fields. Oregon, Washington, all pretty quiet. Look at that, not a whole lot going on. One earthquake last night in the Pacific Plate side of the boundary here. Well away from the Cascadia subduction zone, so not a whole lot going on there, at least in terms of earthquake activity. Seen some movement outside of Idaho, mostly on the northern end of the Sawtooth Fault system there, getting a little swarming activity in the 2 range once again. And up around the Yellowstone area, not a whole lot going on. There's some movement up in Washington or Montana again. Let's check out the Yellowstone seismograph stations here, and this is pretty cool to see the 6.8 signature there across the majority of these seismograph stations. It's pretty cool to look at. Quite the signature indeed for it being thousands of miles away. But if you notice, quite a few of these seismograph stations here not showing a blip or a bleep or a beep. across the board, like Old Faithful. Nothing going on there. I'm not for sure what's going on there. And some of these other seismograph stations, just they're not, I think they're tuned too tight. You know, it's not even going to pick up Bigfoot when they walk across the seismograph stations out there on the land. But it is cool to see on the ones that are properly tuned. As far as local seismic activity, there's a little bit of activity here. And this is kind of odd looking. I'm not for sure if these are, stand by for a second here. That odd activity is kind of showing up more towards the Maple Creek area. Looks a little bit more defined, but these don't look like your typical earthquakes out here. But whatever they are, they're definitely showing up on quite a few stations around the northwest corner of the park. But like I said, they look a little on the weird side. It did show up here in the Moose Creek area as well, down in Idaho. See this earthquake activity? It looks a little bit more defined and more localized down there around the Idaho area. But let me see what we got here. 2.1. See, most of that's up in Montana. So far as the movement that we're seeing here, it's hard to say. It kind of looks like distant earthquake activity, but not specifically localized here. But not like far away, you know, like Chile or Peru or wherever. It definitely looks within like maybe 50 miles or so of these stations. So I'm going to have to look into that, see what's going on, see if there's some activity not being reported around the Yellowstone area. All right, let's go back here to the USGS map, and Texas lighting up a little bit outside of Pecos, Texas. 2.5, White Cities, New Mexico. I don't know why they keep showing it in New Mexico. The majority of these quakes have been in Texas. Oklahoma, not a whole lot going on. The New Madrid zone, pretty quiet. We did see some further activity this morning after the morning update around the South Carolina region. Once again, a couple more twos kicking off in this swarm. Last one was about 1909 UTC time, so we're looking at about 6 or 7 hours ago when that earthquake last struck. So no subsequent new movement to report in that area of the states. Puerto Rico area about the same, no significant movement to note. We did see one earthquake light up here around Savannah, Bright, Honduras area. Savannah, I could have swore that said Bright. In the Gulf of Honduras. This one at about 10 kilometers for a 4.2. Trying to see if that one occurred after the 6.8 this morning. 15, 16. Let's see here. Yeah, it looks like that was before. So I just kind of look for these little signs of movement before a large quake takes place, and that was definitely well before. All right, checking out the big island out here in the beautiful Pacific Ocean. Most of it, all of it, confined here to the southeast region, the port of the Big Island. And that's about it. No other subsequent movement to report there with that little swarm. Activity along the Aleutian Trench, 4.1. That one was prior, it looks like that was prior to the, or right around the time when that other earthquake struck there in the South America region. A little bit of plate dynamics there. Someone was asking me about can earthquakes cause, other earthquakes at long distance? Considerable distances, plates away. Absolutely. It's kind of like a shuffling board, or jigsaw puzzle. You move one piece of the puzzle, and we get some subsequent pressure or release of pressure, depending on where it's going, around the globe, around the map. That's just how it is. Let me double check that. This one here was 510-2306. This one here, 510-2341. So just a short time later, we've seen some activity ramp up here along the northern part of the Pacific Plate. A little bit of shuffling around there. Just a matter of time before California has their turn. But for now, just a whole bunch of aftershocks, whole bunch of microquakes all over the place. All right, let's see. Kuril-Kamchatka Trench did see some further movement here. 2341. Wait, this is 2119, so this was prior to that 6.8. Pretty deep, though. 147 kilometers deep for that 4.6. And Japan Trench way earlier this morning had a 4.6 in that region. Mariana Trench and the Philippine area has gone pretty quiet for now. Of course, we did see a lot of swarming there in that region within the past week. Getting some noticeable activity here along the Kermadec Trench and New Zealand area that I've been kind of talking about. Kind of squeezing the area, 4.5 south of Bluff, New Zealand. That one pretty shallow at about 10 kilometers. Of course, this one here, pretty deep earthquake into the Hikurangi subduction zone of 4.6 at 296 kilometers. And some further deep movement here along the Kermadec Islands region. Kermadec Trench, 407 kilometers deep for another 4.6 in that area. So still watching the surface region. I'm talking about the subduction zone, the locked interface up here for some possible large-scale movement here soon. All right, what else we got? Check out the tremor map here along the Cascadia. It looks like 15 epicenters only. Right here on the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone underneath Northern California. Down there about 25, 35 kilometers or so. We'll check out Mount St. Helens, see what we got here. On their volcanic seismograph here. What do you think the 6.8 looks like on here from South America? Probably pretty impressive. I haven't looked at it yet. Okay, there's a little earthquake. That's with the lines being somewhat flat like that, that actually looks like somewhat of a larger quake. Possibly up in the 1.5 range or higher. Not a big quake, but compared to the little microquakes we've been seeing, that one's showing up pretty prominently. There is the 6.8 around that 23:20 UTC time right there. Pretty awesome. We did have a P wave kick in. That's going to be the first signal, followed up by these S waves, which come in slower. But man, do they radiate throughout the Earth in that type of frequency, that type of vibration throughout the planet. And that lasted for quite a while. You can see those squiggly lines there indicating that 6.8 thousands of miles away down in Argentina. So far as earthquake activity goes, yeah, a little bit. A couple small microquakes, but definitely nothing like that one that is on today's time frame. Right here. A little bit larger. All right, guys, let's see what else we got here. Solar weather activity, of course, that's been pretty active as well, right? We had an X flare, and then we had a large uptick in earthquake activity in the 6.8. Hand in hand, possibly. You know, I think it's got to be somewhat Earth-directed to make the plate tectonics kick up here. I know we've had X's in the past that was pretty much facing away from Earth, and we didn't really notice too much in terms of uptick in earthquake movement. But when we see this thing kind of dead center, squared up with Earth, and it produces a significant flare such as that one we seen this morning before all this earthquake activity took place, I think that's when we see things really ramp up. Getting a little upper C or a middle C flare, it looks like right now, C3.2. There's the X 1.5 from this morning. And that kicked off from the 3006 sunspot. Now, if you've been watching my videos, I've been kind of looking at these sunspots saying, well, yeah, this doesn't look that dynamic. This one doesn't look like it's possible. Well, yeah, I'm not the only one that thought this was really not capable of producing an X flare like that. I want to read a little article here from the spaceweather.com website. X-class solar flare, mixed up sunspot AR3006 exploded today, producing the intense X 1.5 class solar flare. Mixed up. Here's why they're calling it mixed up. Sunspot AR3006 is having an identity crisis. It is supposed to have a plus negative magnetic field. Mostly it does, but deep inside the sunspot's primary core, the polarity is opposite, negative positive. Note the circled region in this magnetic map of the sunspot. Right there, 3006. So, the mixture of magnetic polarities makes this sunspot interesting and dangerous. When opposite polarities bump together, it can light the fuse of magnetic reconnection, the explosive power source of solar flares. If AR 3009 will be geo-effective. Oh, see, that was kind of interesting. They put out this little article before that X flare kicked up here. So there's definitely, that grew between the time that the X flare kicked up this afternoon and last night's update, because that was not there. But like I say, the sun's definitely going to do whatever it wants to. That's for sure. Right now, I mean, I'm looking at it. Here's the most recent update, right? Let me double check, make sure. At least from the Solar Ham site. Yeah, it's done. 3007's looking kind of interesting right here with its intermixing a little bit here in the polarity field. So got to watch that pretty closely. I think that one's going to be the next one. Maybe that's what's coming up right now as far as that C flare goes. Let's see what we got. Good possibility is it is looking pretty bright there. Either way, we definitely have some sunspots to monitor over the next couple days. Got some prominent features here kicking up off the sun, and looking pretty likely that it's going to be very active in terms of sunspot activity as we head towards the end of the week and next weekend. These guys calling for a 20% chance of X flare. Looks like the majority of it is going to be from 3006, 3007, the newer one that's going to be rotating into view here, into Earth view, directed at us. Looks like it's got a 10% chance of an X flare. And the probabilities here for 90% C flare, M flare 45, and overall probable flare possibilities at 20% for the X flare. There's a little bit of radio blackout due to that C flare kicking up here on the sunlit side of the Earth. Kind of out there past Hawaii a little bit. It's getting dark outside now, I believe. Yeah, it's 8 o'clock here, so definitely dark. Close to being dark. There is a little bit of KP indexes kicking up here as well. Looks like getting a little tilt here. See this separation, BZ zone towards the south. Even though we're looking at the speed here diminish, we're still noticing a little bit of southward movement, southward tilt, which could allow that KP index to ramp up or possibly allow some solar wind to come in, because I'm looking at that and it's looking a little bit more amplified than what the KP indexes here are showing. All right, folks, I think that's about it. Like I say, it's been pretty active today. It's been really active over the last couple days as far as earthquake activity goes. Now, I don't think we're done yet. I know we've been awfully quiet, but man, things are getting moving. Outside of Ottawa, we got a 3.1 in the Ontario area. 3.1 at 11 kilometers. Ottawa area. There we go. I meant Ottawa. I was looking at that, seeing if there's another earthquake underneath there. It kind of looks like there is. Looks like there's a double earthquake. But yeah, just outside the Ottawa area for that 3.1, and some further movement over here along the BC area with the latest quake here. Outside of Squamish, is that right? BC, 1.4 at 1 kilometer depth, and some movement up here along the Pacific Plate, North American Plate boundary. All right, guys, I'm going to jump off here and just kind of monitor the live stream here for a little bit. I do want to appreciate everyone tuning in, and make sure you guys subscribe while you're here and like the video. Giving the video a thumbs up helps out the YouTube algorithms to putting out the this YouTube channel's videos and notifications. So I'd appreciate if you guys give a thumbs up if you like this video. Make sure you subscribe while you're here as well, and of course the notification bell is there as well, so that you can be informed whenever we go live or whenever we post an update, which is most of the time whenever we have breaking news such as solar weather events or volcanic activity or earthquake activity like we've seen today. So I try to jump on it as quick as I can, and most of the time here I'm one of the first channels before even the news stations to post up information in regards to a quake. So make sure you guys hit that like button and kind of help us out here. All right, guys, have a good night. Please stay safe out there, and we will chat you a little bit later. Peace out.